Good morning, everyone. This is Professor Jihad Uhuru. This is week 3, I think. Yeah, week 3 in African American Studies online class. Now, first, a little house cleaning. You guys, every single thing is on the syllabus. You have to read. There's absolutely no excuse for anybody to make less than 100 on the syllabus quiz. And I say this because everything is on the syllabus. I'm not trying to trick you guys. If you Google it, it's going to be wrong. Understand me? It's going to be wrong if you Google the answer. Trust me. It's not the answer that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the Google. I'm looking for the answers that I have specifically in the syllabus. And in reference, one question a lot of people miss, I said, what is NGUZO SABA? Now, if you look it up, it's going to say 7 principles of Kwanzaa, all this other stuff. But NGUZO SABA is the 7 principles of African heritage. These 7 principles, not the 7 principles, not the 7 principles of Africa, not the 7 principles of African American heritage, but the 7 principles of African heritage. This is so important. It's so important to understand, it's so important to know, and so important to embody as a descendant of the continent of Africa, of that diaspora. One of the reasons it's important because it is a way that guided human life for thousands of years. Understand this, family. Before the first European civilization showed up, okay, or when the first ever European civilization showed up, let me put it that way, Africa was 10,000 years in decline. That continent that we call Africa was 10,000 years in decline. Do you understand what I'm saying? Listen to me, family. 10,000 years in decline. That means it was 10,000 years before the first European civilization showed up. Then Africa, what is at its height? And I think I've said this before, and you guys heard it in the John Henry Clark video. There's a reason that there was no word for jail in ancient Africa. There was no word that could describe old folks' home, right? There was no word for a lot of things. Reason being because we had no need for that. Understand this, family. If you are born into an existence and you're raised and you embody and you feel, and the only thing you think of, I am part of this thing. I am not an individual. I am not one. I am part of something so much bigger. I am part of the tribe. I am part of the community. So if you embody that you are part of that, then everything that you do will usually be in relationship to moving the tribe or the community forward, because that is who you are. See, and I've said this before, one of the biggest tricks that Eurocentricity, Europeanism, whatever you want to call, pulled, if not the biggest trick, is with making people to believe that we were individuals outside of a group. Okay? If you were an individual outside of the group, you can exist on your own. You put a 3-week baby on an island by itself with no other humans. You put a 2-week dog on an island with no other dogs, but there's other things. The dog has a much better chance to survive. The baby has absolutely 0 chance of surviving because that baby cannot feed itself. What I'm trying to get at is that everybody needs people. Everybody has, and the thing is, we get caught up, and we're going to get into spirituality thing because NGUZO SABA is all about spirituality. It's the 7 principles that guide us in the things that we do. You know, it's the 7 principles that guide people, period, humanity. See, spirituality is not worshiping something. Spirituality is who you are. See, the fact that you can communicate with others, you see, that's spiritual. We have a conscious connection with every human being on this planet. You understand me? We might realize it, we might not recognize it, but we have a special conscious connection to our indigenous African American people. And that consciousness has brought us together on a small level that has overturned and overcome so much in the past. So many things that If you look with the physical eye, it seems physically impossible. A few against thousands. Well, understand this, family. When you think that you don't have a chance, understand that only 3% of this population has more wealth than 97% of the population. About 2 or 3 white men have more money than have more economic power and money than every black person, every African American in this country. So don't tell me anything about what a minority cannot do. A minority can do anything. Minority of people have done everything throughout time. Minority of people won revolutions. They've orchestrated revolutions. Okay? This is NGUZO SABA, but understand this, they didn't do it by themselves. See, a few brothers in 1901, a few white brothers called, two brothers actually, Stalin and Lenin, they led a revolution. They went outside of the Russian state, went to the Bolshevik mountains, they left, and they came back, and they led the Bolshevik party to freedom in 1901. You had the French Revolution, same thing. And her first, let me tell you, these were students. These were like you guys. These were students, young students. It was young folks that moved every revolution forward because they didn't look at the numbers, I don't have a chance. They looked at, oh, I am not going to tolerate this no more. No more. There's nothing you can do to me is going to make me stand up and tolerate this oppression no more. It's all about moving the oppressed to freedom. That's what the Russian Revolution was about. That's what the French Revolution was about. That's what the Cuban Revolution in 1959 was about. When Che Guevara, Argentinian student then, college student, working on his doctorate, Fidel Castro, two men led people to the San Maestro Mountains outside that community, right? And they led them back, just a minority group, led them back to overturn the Cuban regime then, and did. Let's talk about Africa. We could talk about the Kikuyu and the Mau Revolution. We could talk about so many. We could talk about Emil Cabral. I can tell you every revolution in history that has been successful has never been started by, there's never been a masses of people that overturned. It was always a minority that fueled people to move to power. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about that in NGUZO SABA, and we're going to talk about a few other things. And we're also going to talk about reparations. But again, let's get back to a little house cleaning. Please, family, turn in your assignments on time. Okay, look, you have to read, okay? You go to, on the website, go to assessments, all right? Go under assignments. You see all the assignments. You don't have to ask me. Syllabus, everything is on the syllabus. It's plain. You got to read, people. I got it very simple. You have this date, September the 47th. Go down to September the 47th. You know what I'm saying? And on the syllabus, and you'll see what we're doing, okay? I only have the first 6 weeks because I'm seeing how it goes. I will put the rest of the syllabus up probably around the 5th week. Okay? But you have to read, family. You have to do the work. You have to do the discussion posts. You have to do this, okay? This is a very simple class. I'm trying to get you to understand a little bit about why it's so important to learn African American studies, learn African heritage, learn everything. Okay? Because unfortunately, everything that we learn in school are in reference to when the first white male showed up. That is why there's a Christopher Columbus Day. Because no white male had landed on the shores of this country then. This country that they stole and named America, okay? I can't be racist. It's impossible because I'm not in a position to oppress a class of people. And I'm not prejudiced. Well, I am a little prejudiced. I'm a little prejudiced because I am a little prejudiced, not against race, but I'm a prejudiced against people. And African Americans are simply, because of what the white racist structure, what white racism has done to the minds and mentality of black men, black women, and me myself, very, very apathetic about. It's hard for me to trust. It's hard for us to trust. So you guys have to understand, we have trust issues because we've gone through so much. Joyce DeGlyle-Leary calls it, we're suffering from post-traumatic slave syndrome. That is because what our ancestors went through and what we are still going through is a result of a racist system. Understand this, of racism. And there was a question I had on there, and like you have white folks that say, well, I have never owned slaves. I've never owned people. My grandfather's never owned people. Why should I be responsible for it? Let me tell you, they should be responsible for it because the same systems are permeated in the American fabric today, in our laws and everything. Understand this, people. We, these white folks and us, we go by a constitution. Listen to me now. A constitution that was written by 53 slaveholders, rapists, murderers, kidnappers, and killers. Criminals. You understand this? Criminals. They wrote it. Criminals, men, white men wrote this criminals. If they say this is why our laws should be, that's why. That's one reason. Another reason is why we keep perpetuating these status quo. They say this 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment was brought about to ensure that all people in this land were equal and had equality. Well, how does that work for us? How has any of those amendments work for black people in this country? Those amendments didn't help Trayvon Martin. Those amendments didn't help Emmett Till. They didn't help Mike Brown. They didn't help Sandra Bland. They didn't help so many African Americans that have been murdered senselessly by people who are paid to uphold and to protect our citizens. The laws didn't help the 2 million black men that are in prison, mostly for nonviolent offenses, mostly for trying to get ahead, mostly because they didn't understand how to survive, mostly because they were taught that they never added anything to human culture in their history books at school. All right? When you teach people that they have been nothing but problems, and then you teach people that they have added nothing to advance human existence, you teach them to hate themselves. You teaching them that if they hate themselves, they hate others that look like them. Do you understand what I'm saying, people? Oh, shoot. Oh, sorry about that. Now, let's get to this NGUZO SABA. NGUZO SABA is so important because it's part of your post this week, you guys. You guys have to do these posts. You need to do 6 posts, okay? It's very, very imperative. It's very important to do the post on reparations also. You have to, that's a mandatory post on the reparations because it's deep. Because these are questions that we need to talk about. These are things that we need to talk about. And for the reparations post, you have a PowerPoint. I'll also read a little piece on reparations after we finish this NGUZO SABA. All right. So look, NGUZO SABA, let's go. Now, if I go to content, you guys. All right. I'm going to content now. You can't see it. Okay. Now, what I'm going to is, Sorry. Let me see. Go to home. All right. Content. I'm going to content in a second. And under content, it says at the very bottom, you scroll down, you guys don't say, oh, Professor, I can't see. You got to keep scrolling down. That's why, because I keep putting stuff on there every week. Okay, it says NGUZO SABA, the meaning of. You click on that, okay? I'm clicking on it now. Oh, shoot. Okay. And this document, all right, it says NGUZO SABA, the 7 principles. It is the 7 principles of African heritage I will repeat. And this is why. The first principle on here is umoja. Umoja means unity. And to go deeper, it says to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. To strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. That's first principle. And you know these in order. The second principle is Kuji Chagalia. Kuji Chagalia means self-determination. As to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. And when I say to define ourselves, define who we are in reference to us. Don't let anybody else define you. Don't let anybody say that you are this and you are that. Don't let these history books that's written by people who hate you, who historically hate you, brother, don't understand you. You let them define us. You let them, we have to name ourselves. Stop giving our children these damn names. Sandra, Timmy, Tommy, Ronnie, Robbie, Mikey. They don't have anything to do with who you are. Anything to do with that. What they have to do with what they're showing, oh, okay. They have embraced the enslaved slave masters so much. When these words come out of their mouth, they think they sound good. Oh, they think they sound pleasant to the ears. But we're not even going to possibly even try to even pronounce words like Uhuru, Jihad Uhuru, or names like, oh, I'm not, what do we say? Oh, I'm not going to mess that name up. Can you help me out with that name? No. This is who you are, king. This is who you are, queen. You see, when it says name ourselves, we're talking about we come from cultures that the tribe, the elders were responsible for the naming of that child. The elders who had known the mother, who had known the father of this child. They look at the father, they pray on it, they talk on it. They talk about the attributes that the mother and the father have. They talk about the attributes that they want the child to have. They pray on, they think on it, and they come up with a name that means something, a name that means either something, the character, or who they think or who they see this child becoming. You understand what I'm saying? We name our friends, oh, what's a Sandra? What's a Tom? What's a Mike? I'm going to tell you what a jihad is. A jihad, it means striving and struggling to bring others into the awareness of the oneness of God. My middle name is Shahid. Shahid means witness to the truth. My last name is Uhuru. Uhuru is African. It's Swahili, Kiswahili, for freedom. The Kiswahili language was similar to the international language of the African diaspora, the African continent. Okay? Now, that's what I'm saying, to name ourselves for us and speak for ourselves. Speak for ourselves in reference. We don't have to bow down or whatever, when we talk about white folks, when we talk about our oppression, when we talk about our freedom. Why do we talk differently when we talk to a group of black folks as opposed to a group of white folks? That's why I, Jihad Uhuru, teach black excellence in every class, because all of you are black excellence. I don't care what skin tone that you are. If you're white, if you're green, if you're yellow, you came from a black, kicky-haired African woman 1.8 million years ago. Understand me. That is your great times 50 million grandmama. Understand that. Everybody on this planet. Ujima. Ujima is UJIMA. It means collective work and responsibility. To build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and solve them together. Why? Because our brothers and sisters' problems are our problems, because we are part of them and they are part of us. There's something called Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a very popular African proverb. It's, I am because we are, and we are because I am. I can't be without you. You can't be without me. So we have to build and maintain our community together. Make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems, and solve them together, not together. All right? Stop thinking that you know every damn thing. Stop thinking because you got all these damn degrees, you know every damn thing, Jihad. Speaking to myself a little bit. Everybody has a shared reality, and everybody views reality differently. So we need to collectively work together. Now the fourth principle is Ujamaa. Ujamaa is cooperative economics, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. See, this is how do you think the white businessman started? First it was a sole proprietorship. Then it became a partnership for two. Then it became a corporation. But no, we are so into this me, mine mentality, that we won't even get together with our brothers and sisters because we are so mistrustful even of our own people. You know why we're mistrustful? Because we don't have a foundation. We're mistrustful because just like driftwood in the middle of the ocean, we will go whichever way the wind blows it. If somebody tells us this, if somebody tells us that, we'll believe it. So we're so mistrustful of our own people. We're mistrustful because we have been gone through this process for over 500 years. When you beat down and you crush, and the first order of business to enslave a person is to get them to put down their way of worship, their way of viewing deity. And that's what we've done. And that's what we've done. That's the first way. Our spirituality was attacked first. Then everything else was attacked. But understand, Ujamaa is to build and maintain our own stores, okay? That means, brother, you're doing bad, okay? Sister, you're doing bad with your bookstore, okay? Come together and let's open up a bigger bookstore. Let's do, or 15 people come together. Let's open up a huge bookstore like Barnes and Noble, something like that. And we have to support each other. Yes, Macy's is going to be cheaper. Yes, it's going to be cheaper to these other some of these other white businesses because they buy so much from each other where they get a better price because they're buying in so much bigger bulk. We don't have the money to do that, one, because number one, we don't come together. We don't pool our money together. We don't open up businesses in our own communities. Okay? And two, we are so mistrustful of each other. So what? A pair of jeans is gonna cost you $5 more at the black store. Support the brother, support the sister, because they part of you. You supporting yourself. NIA, the fifth principle. NIA is purpose. To make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. Traditional greatness. Let me give you an example, you guys. Do you know that in the 1940s, Atlanta, the hub, Auburn Avenue, was black owned? I mean, we had black owned businesses like crazy. Chicago, black owned. Tulsa, Oklahoma, you've heard of Black Wall Street. It was Greenwood, Arch, and Pine. You may have heard of the Gap Band. The Gap Band was named after those three streets, Greenwood, Arch, and Pine, where you have prominent, rich black folks. Rosewood, Florida. Let's talk about Detroit. All over this country, you had black businesses that were successful, that were burgeoning. Why? Because we supported black business. Understand this. In 1901, we had more banks, more black businesses than we do today. Why? Because we supported our own. Why do you think we made up 1/10 of 1% of the population in 1901? And why do you think we still make up 1/10 of 1%? Why do you think we made up 1/10 of 1% of the nation's wealth in 1901? And in 2012, we made up 1/10 of 1% of the nation's wealth, despite you had these individual billionaires and stuff. Because we don't have black businesses. We don't own our own. We don't support our own, okay? So one, we have to have purpose. To make, NIA is the fifth one, is purpose. To make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. Not traditional greatness just on Auburn Avenue, places, but their traditional greatness as rulers, as African kings, as African gods, damn it. Kuumba, number 6 is creativity. Kuumba, 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 creativity, oh wow. To do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. Think about this, you guys. To do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than the way we inherited it. Look, if you have a sagging pants mentality, raise your children up, raise the next generation up to have that. That's creativity, that's beauty, do it. All right? Your physical community, your streets, clean up behind yourselves. Teach our youth and our ancestors the importance of community, the importance of having a clean community, the importance of not having cars on the street or Mechanic Joe working on your cars. It's the importance of keeping your own things up, all kinds of stuff. Now, the 7th principle is Imani. Oh my gosh. Without Imani, you can't practice any of the other ones. It's faith, baby, faith. That means to believe within all our heart in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteous victory of our struggle. Faith. You gotta believe. You gotta believe you can unite. You gotta believe that you can come together in Eugene. You have to believe in your heart, and if you can believe it, you can do it. Trust me, I did 7.5 years in 7 different federal prisons up and down the East Coast of the United States. I knew that I was going to be a professor. I knew that I was going. Once I started reading, there was nothing stopping me. I don't care. So what? Oh, I'm a convicted felon drug dealer, so you mean to tell me I can't teach my people? No, out your goddamn mind. I'm going to figure out a way, and I've done it, and I will continue to do that. You can do that too. Anything that you want to do, you can do it, people. But you have to practice. You have to understand the core concepts. You have to understand that we are. It ain't I am. It's we are. There's no I. It's we are. Understand that. Okay? And you have to learn this in NGUZO SABA. It's so important for you to learn. It's so important for you to embody and understand it. Because There's a thing called the Ten Commandments, right? The Ten Commandments are taken from what you call the 42 negative, 42 negative, 42. I can't remember, but it's taken for the 42, the laws of Mod, 42 laws of Mod, okay, which was the guiding principles that we live by. The 7 principles are the 7 principles of the 42 laws of Mod, the main 7 principles that embody pretty much most of the 42 negative confessions. Well, the 42 negative confessions is what I'm talking about. These are ancient African texts and documents, which your Bible came from, which your Bible was drafted from, which your 10 Commandments were taken from. But it was put in the individualistic thing. No, it ain't about individual. It's about, because if you follow the 7, if you understand that you are part of this whole, if you understand that your spirituality is your community conscious connection to others, to be able to communicate with others, to be able, they call it hearing. You don't hear a damn thing. You can't hear. It's impossible to hear. What you do in you have eardrums, boom, 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 boom. The vibrations that I'm saying right now, they're bouncing off your eardrums. You will be able to understand what I'm saying because of your understanding of communication, because of your spirituality, the conscious connection that we share with each other, with all humanity. That conscious connection to communicate, to help you move forward, to help you understand what I'm feeling, what I'm saying. That is spirituality, people. We have a communal connection, a consciousness. And we're very, very consciously connected. The ones who view themselves as descendants of the diaspora of Africa, of that type of humanity, okay? Now, that's enough on, that's finished on the NGUZO SABA. Now next, let's talk about reparations. Why reparations? Why reparations? Why reparations? Well, let me read you guys something because I don't want to really get it because you guys have to answer this question on your discussion post this week. Now, we're going to talk about reparations. And first, the word reparations is synonymous with the word black consciousness. Okay. Random House's Webster Dictionary of English Language, 2nd edition, defines the word reparations as the making of amends for wrong or injury done. Now, in reference to the word reparations, the same dictionary defines it as compensation in money, material labor, etc., payable by a defeated country to another country or to an individual for loss, suffering during or as a result of war, restoration to good condition, repair. Now, consciousness. Let's talk about the word consciousness is defined as the state of being conscious, awareness of one's own surroundings. Again, no, it's not one's own surroundings. It's aware of the collective surroundings that you are with. Now, Random House's dictionary further defines conscious as the thoughts and feelings collectively, collectively of an individual. But we know there's no individual, so it's collectively of a group, right? Or it says collectively of an individual or of an aggregate of people. So it is safe to say that the consciousness of a people is a direct reflection of their perceived reality. The reality for descendants of slaves is one that has been passed down for generations, a reality that was turned into the bodies and souls of their slave ancestors. This perceived reality was engineered and orchestrated by a people that meant for black people to see themselves as slaves, not as human beings, but as slaves. Now, if we are to use these definitions to define reparations and consciousness, then I will show how descendants of the white American slave masters are using the laws and ordinances of the American government to continue to perpetuate mass murder in African American communities by not instituting reparations. Now, the root of reparations is to repair. Something only needs to be repaired when it is broken. In his article, Psychological Legacy of Slavery, Dr. Naeem Akbar in 1996 points out something. Black psychologist Kenneth Clark observed in 1972 well. See, Isaac Newton's scheme of things, he said, a body at rest, Isaac Newton, white man, said a body at rest remains at rest unless acted upon by some external force. Now, Newtonian conceptions of absolute time and space have so conditioned many of us that it is impossible for us to conceive of events that have occurred long ago in the past, which is slavery, enslavement, as having as much effect in determining present behavior as those events of relatively recent occurrence. Now, Dr. Naeem Akbar in 1996 Psychological legacy of slavery. He goes on to assert that slavery is much more than any other single event shaped the mentality of the present African American. Since none of us were around during the atrocities of enslavement, it seemingly happened so long ago. Blacks have been taught to only identify with today and look to tomorrow. Blacks, and for the most part whites in America, have no idea the black consciousness is broken and in need of psychological repair. The African consciousness was intact before white America stole African people and brought them to a foreign land and enslaved them. Slavery broke the minds of black people. Akbar further states that in order to fully grasp the magnitude of our current problems, we must reopen the books of the event of slavery. Today, the debate about slavery reparations is frequently traced to General Sherman's Field Order Number 15 of 1865. He said he was going to set aside this land for the settlement of the Negroes, now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States then was, Abraham Lincoln. Now, Kramer, 2009, he says, the field order entered a popular culture under the slogan 40 acres and a mule. 40 acres and a mule. Within a few months, 400,000 acres were distributed among 40,000 freedmen until President Andrew Johnson returned the land to the former slave owners. Let's put this in context, you guys. 1798, bam, America was open for any European or anybody to come over here. Now, if you came over here a lot of times, they would give you up to 100. If you came over here, the promise, I'll give you 160 acres of land. Anybody, just come over and help us settle and develop this. And for every slave that you own, I forgot, I think you get like 50 or 100 more acres of land or something like that for every slave that you own then. So now you're going to give us 40 acres of land when you offer immigrants 160 acres of land in your Immigrant Act, and every slave, they get so much more land. That is craziness. And then you're going to take the land back. Okay, now let's go down. I'm sorry, I digress. The first movement for reparations began in the 1890s as a strange coalition of Southern ex-Confederates and ex-enslaved people. When enslaved owner's son, Walter R. Vaughn, joined forces with ex-slave Callie House to demand pensions for ex-enslaved people. All right, while African American supporters hoped that reparations would improve the living standards of ex-slaves. White Southern Democrats pursued the bill as a federal subsidy for a stagnating Southern economy. Sherman's Field Order and the notion of slave pensions survived in the minds of many former enslaved people as a deferred expectation of compensation for their and their ancestors' unpaid labor. For example, Boston Blackwell, an ex-enslaved person from North Little Rock, Arkansas, who was interviewed between 1936 and 1938 by the Works Progress Administration. The old story about 40 acres and a mule, it made me laugh. The officer sure did tell me I would get a parcel of ground to farm. Nothing ever hatched out of that, neither. I filed for a pension, I never did get it. This is what he said. In 1989, Congressman John Conyers revived the reparations debate by introducing Bill H.R. 40, commissioned to study reparation proposals for African Americans Act. The renewed debate was encouraged by a political climate that led to other historical reparation cases in the United States. Between 1971 and 1986, a number of Native American indigenous peoples, tribes were awarded land grants and reparations payments. And in 1988, President Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, which paved the way for reparation payments to former Japanese American World War II internees. The president issued signed formal apology letters and reparation payments of $20,000 per person beginning in 1990. Not one penny was awarded to African Americans. It was as if African Americans had not suffered the worst and most brutal mass human suffering on record. 21 years after Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, 147 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, America apologized for slavery. Do you understand? 147 years after? Wow. In June 2009, the United States Senate formally passed an apology resolution acknowledging the fundamental injustice cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of slavery and Jim Crow laws, but was careful to also include a paragraph stating that nothing in this resolution, listen you guys, authorizes or supports any claim against the United States. Wow. Serves as a settlement of any claim against the United States to secure that no reparations claims could be based on it. While it is certainly important that the mass crimes inflicted on the African people for a period of 246 years and on, which the economic wealth of the West was built, is finally formally acknowledged, the Senate resolution leaves a bitter taste and puts into a question the seriousness of its authors and the motives behind its passing. Okay, you apologize and you say it's wrong. But you say, oh, well, we have no liability. That is an oxymoron. As of present, there has been a plethora of legislative resolutions that have apologized for the perpetuation of slavery. Many call for racial healing and reconciliation, which, after careful consideration, seems to be a farce. Many call for racial healing and reconciliation, which, after careful consideration seems to be a farce, I said. Although the text of each resolution varies, they all fail to provide any form of concrete remedial measures. Building upon work in political science, legal scholarship, and critical race theory, Davis provides an interesting convergence analysis of the U.S. House, Senate, and 7 state legislative resolutions apologizing for slavery and Jim Crow. Now, Ms. Davis argues that although these apologies appear to promote racial healing and reconciliation, they actually promulgate white supremacy by covertly thwarting reparations claims or other racial justice efforts for Black Americans. They perpetuate a system of white political dominance while providing the illusion of substantive racial reconciliation and progress. Spirited conversations regarding the likelihood of reparations being awarded to descendants of U.S. slaves began in spheres of African American discourse, such as the Black press. The African American press has played a central role for over a century for providing a space for discourse regarding issues of importance in this community. Reparations have been generally favored among the African American community. Unfortunately, the United States government claims that by law slavery was a state right. They're saying, the U.S. government is saying now that slavery was a state right. The U.S. government hides behind the Constitution and laws that don't call into question ethics and morals. Human being, and you say, let's talk about that for a minute. How the hell is it a state right when people that were enslaved escaped and they went up north? Well, you had fugitive slave laws that provided for people up south to be able to come back and get them. And the fact is, you had laws all around this country that were first to enslave a person, keep a person ignorant. If you taught an enslaved person how to read, if you were called teaching an enslaved person how to read, that was 39 lashes with a whip and usually about a $100 fine. That's a lot of money. $100 back then is probably about maybe $10,000 now, maybe more, something like that. Okay. Now, my question is, how can the people not suffer from mental illness when for 246 years they were crowded on slave ships and spent months at sea and literally on top of each other? The Africans slept, ate, defecated, and menstruated within the same few feet of space. Life wasn't any better when they arrived in the Americas. They were whipped, raped, lynched, and starved to death. Some people push back when Joy DeGruy talks about the 246 years of slavery to explain behaviors that continue today. She states, the moment they hear the word slave, there is this adversarial response of get over it or you're free now, aren't you? Racism and oppression are still a part of society, as it was, Leary calls, post-traumatic slave syndrome, a condition that is a consequence of multi-generational oppression of Africans and their descendants resulting from centuries of slavery. To oppress a group over a long period of time, people must justify their behavior by labeling respected authority figures in the past, such as presidents, science, and philosophers, supported a contention that blacks inherently and genetically were inferior to whites. Bullshit. Excuse me. Leary goes even further by saying a lot of people don't understand that what happened in the past does affect third and fourth generations. see, enslaved people were captured, shipped, auctioned, and brutalized suffered from what we today call post-traumatic stress disorder. And much of the trauma has been passed down from generation to generation. One of the major impacts of slavery and segregation was to indoctrinate black people for centuries to feel inferior and to devalue their own lives. Racism's assertion that a black life is not worth as much as a white life has pervaded all of this nation's systems and institutions. Listen, you guys, including the healthcare system. While most blacks overcome such indoctrination and do not succumb to the psychic damage of oppression, there are still many, particularly among the poor, who struggle with feelings of inferiority, hopelessness, and powerlessness as a result of generations of brainwashing that go back to chattel slavery. You see, anytime you have a school system that teaches you again that you have added nothing, you've added nothing to world culture. Only thing you've done was been a problem and a victim. Number one, you don't identify with that. Number two, you lash out at that. You act against everything, against what you were saying you are, because you don't want to be that. You have to find someone to be. So now you want to be like your white daddy, your white enslavers. So you take on some of these roles, you assimilate. You want to move around them, and we've done that. We've destroyed our own just to live next door to them. You know, fee, fi, fo, figure. I can't stand up. You know the rest. That's our stinking thinking. Okay? But if you don't value your own life, you neglect your health. If you don't value your own life, you're more likely to engage in risky behaviors. If you don't value your own life, you lose motivation to succeed. And if you don't value your own life and you lack confidence, you are more likely to be a high school dropout. The rate is about 50% for black youth in many cities across America. Now, I'm not even going to tell you what the rate of white youth is, because we are the subject of analysis. We're not the object of white folks. So I don't need to tell you what theirs is. We have a problem. 50% of our black youth in many cities across America, the dropout rate is 50% or above. Among blacks, self-destructive behaviors along with racial profiling lead to a mind-boggling incarceration rate for young black men. Currently, there are about 2.2 million people in U.S. jails and prisons. Between 800,000 and 1 million are black men who will be returned to our communities without rehabilitation. Okay, how can you read something when nothing was ever done? Re is to do again. You've never been habilitated. You've never been taught who you are. So you can't be rehabilitated, right? Rehabilitated, that's crazy. That word is insane to black people. How can you do again something that's never been done to you? You've never been taught. You've never been taught who you are in reference to everybody else. You've never been taught about your greatness. You've never been taught, you've never been able to embody that you are a king, that you are so much bigger than that thief or whatever sent you to prison. Okay? But let me go on again. It says between 800,000 and 1 million are black men who will be returned to our communities without rehabilitation, which strain families and entire communities. Some 50 to 75% of young offenders nationwide are believed to have a diagnosable mental health disorder. Stop talking about, baby, he just crazy. Jody, our nigga just crazy. No, he is crazy. He needs help. He needs to sit on somebody's couch. Don't just chalk up crazy, we all just laugh about it. That's what we do in the community. The rates for young black offenders are thought to be similar or higher because more black children live in poverty. This is not to suggest that slavery and Jim Crow are solely responsible for black poverty, the high school dropout rate, or crime. But the statistics and the data speak for themselves. There is no question that slavery and Jim Crow play a substantial role in today's black male-female consciousness, which largely influences the physical condition of today's black male and female. In his book, Black on Black Violence, Amos Wilson states that psychological complex is the father of the child and the man. According to Sigmund Freud, the white man, the child becomes a man-child when the Oedipus complex is resolved through introjection and acceptance. When external governing complexes become internal governing complexes, goes on to assert that the individual psychologically is but the actualized, delimited transfiguration of the collective size, the sociological, the political, personalized, whatever. In essence, Wilson and Freud, as well as a host of other behavioral scientists, have said and shown through the action of African Americans that the biological father is not necessarily the psycho-spiritual father. As a result of slavery, the white man, backed by United States laws and the Constitution, is the black man and woman's father. Who does black America depend on for information, education, and self-substantiation? The white man. The same master that is largely responsible for black criminalization, milicide, and genocide is our black daddy. White man is the black daddy. The white man and his constitution. The white ruling class seeks to project a liberal and nonviolent self and public image faithfully committed to protecting the constitutional and civil rights of all residents regardless of race, creed, or color. At the same time, the ruling class wishes to retain its power to rule, to retain its tremendous wealth, power, hegemony, and privilege that they have offered themselves. Now, on the other hand, since the slave master ruling class is not committed to its own destruction, then you can logically see what its projected self-image, public image, or social, political commitments are a con. Class privilege and advantage require the subordination of other classes and groups. Understand this, you. Class privilege, that means if I'm the ruling class, the advantages require it requires the subordination of other classes, which they say lesser classes and lesser groups. That's the only way you can have class privilege. Understand that, y'all. So it is in the slave master's best interest to keep the black consciousness broken. In his book, The Moon Within Us, Dr. Asa Hilliard, God rest his soul, asserts that as a result of the atrocities suffered during slavery, African American people have lost their cultural identity. A group's cultural identity is directly proportional to the degree which it can replenish its identity through education, ritual, and role-taking. Education that was not allowed during slavery, education that was stripped from the African American. The group's rituals were forbidden and eventually replaced with rituals such as Euro-Christianity by the slave master. And last, role-taking was that of a slave. In the same book, Dr. Hilliard also asserts that blacks have also suffered a loss of control over social institutions such as the church and the school. Of course they have. 1865, 1,000 schools were opened. Wow. The Freedmen's Bureau opened 1,000 schools in 1865. Okay. Carter G. Woodson said in Miseducation of the Negro about this. He said that they had the enthusiasm if only they had the knowledge. I'll say that today. They had the enthusiasm if only they had the knowledge. We have parents that have the enthusiasm. They'll commit crimes to get their children into so-called better schools. But I'm going to ask you, family, what he meant was, it doesn't make no difference as long as you're teaching our children that we were victims, as long as that you're teaching our children that they added nothing to human history other than being slaves, being victims, being beat down, then you're still teaching them to hate themselves. As long as you teach Christopher Columbus discovered America, you're teaching people to hate themselves. As long as you teach children that these white racist slaveholders, murderers, killers, rapists are the founding fathers, you're teaching them to hate themselves. When you try to teach me to love someone who's raped me, love someone who's killed me, love someone who's done everything to hate me, love someone who's done all this to me, and you want me to call them my founding father, what the hell did they find? I wish they found my mind because I done lost the damn thing so I can stop this bullshit. That's what I wish they would do. So it's so sad. It's so sad. It's so sad, you guys. We have this type of mentality, but it comes from everything been stolen from us. And this way it's taught. We send our children to these schools today, same thing. Oh, I want to send my school to the better schools because these schools have teachers there, they have computers and stuff like that. They have more shit to divide, more shit to confuse you. They don't care about you because they don't know who you are. Black folks, a lot of the educators, they go through these schools of miseducation. You get your BS. Then you get your more of the same. Then you go on and strive and get your PhD piled higher and deeper in Eurocentric ideology, an ideology that is meant to keep you down and keep you down, keep you ignorant. It's meant to kill you. Understand that. If your Learning does not show you how to move your people forward, your culture forward. Then throw it in the ash cans of history. This is from John Henry Clark. 3 objectives can be ascribed to a program of reparations. Okay, I'm not gonna get into that. Because the only thing I wanted to read you guys, I wanted to give you a fundamental understanding, and I wanted to frame reparations in a way that maybe you can kind of understand. But let me give you another framing. When it comes to American slavery, 2 injustices are inextricably intertwined: uncompensated forced labor and racial discrimination. While a substantial number of reparations proponents focused on forced labor, some focuses more prominently on racial discrimination during the Jim Crow era until today. Arguments about lost wages and capital that continue to accrue interest appear more amenable to individual level reparations, while arguments based on racial discrimination appear more amenable to group level reparations. Group level reparations proposals usually apply the same racial categories that provide the basis for discrimination in the past. To add further validity to the reparations argument, a Portland, Oregon lawyer offered a theory of post-traumatic slave syndrome as a defense in a murder case. The Oregonian reports, the defendant was charged with murder by abuse in the June 2003 death of his 2-year-old son. An assistant professor at Portland State University developed the slave theory and has testified that blacks today are affected by years of slavery because the original slaves were never treated for the trauma they experienced. Post-traumatic slave syndrome speaks directly to the consciousness of black society. The newspaper report says that although the judge of the case threw out the argument in pretrial hearing, she said she would consider allowing it if the lawyer can show it as an accepted mental disorder with a valid scientific basis. One major problem in getting a reparations plan-based is that people, black and white, have not accepted that most blacks have a mental disorder and that the scientific basis is rooted in the treatment of blacks for 246 years during slavery and 147 years after enslavement. In his book, The Miseducation of the Negro, Carter G. Woodson states, blacks have been going to the back door for so long, the longer they have to be told to go, they automatically go, and if there is no back door, then they will cut one out. Blacks have been systematically, psychologically, and sociologically conditioned for 2 things: to entertain white America and to do the work that white America doesn't want to do. Results of this study would lead one to believe that blacks as a whole have low self-esteem. I say we have low self-respect, not self-esteem. Some blacks think that they're the greatest thing since the wheel. But you don't have no respect, baby. You got low self-respect when you call your sisters a bitch. Or when you call your brothers a dog, man. What up, dog? What up, my dude? What up, my dog? What up, cat? These are animals, baby. We're the only culture of people that lovingly call ourselves animals, and we take that word nigga. I'm sorry, you can't do it, but we have done it. We just like we took everything from the pig. We take the worst. We take the worst that white people has used us, and we try to put sugar on it. But it's still shit, y'all. No matter how much sugar you put on the word nigga, it's still shit. It ain't gonna change. It'll be a little sweeter, but it's still shit. But we take the word nigga, we take the word bitch, we take all these words, all these negative words, and we use them, and then we try to justify, oh, well, we don't mean about it. Yes, you damn do. This is what these words mean. This is what they historically have meant to you. 3,000 years ago, you didn't have these words. Say, oh, this meant, it ain't like it meant something 3,000 years. It always meant that negativity. And that shows you right there that we have a problem as a people. Leary defines, Joyce DeGraw Leary in her book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, she defines blacks as having a vacant esteem, which refers to the primary lack of esteem along with feelings of hopelessness, depression, and general self-destructive outlook. In the beginning, I gave 2 definitions. One for reparations, which meant to mend, and the other consciousness, which means that state of being aware. Based on the current condition of the collective consciousness of black America, one could easily make a strong case that as a group, that black people are not aware. If we are to believe Albert Einstein's definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over the same way and expecting different results, then that defines black consciousness in America. We are insane. What do? We do the same things over and over again. You know, we march. When something happens, we march, and that's it. We go home. We march. Now, let me tell you what they've done. Black folks, they've taken it to the new level. Well, we're going to let them march. Now we're going to make money off them marching. We want you to march. We want you to march because we're going to bring the cameras out. But we just march. We're going to show. They know that we can come together. We know that we can come together. But what else can we do besides come together? Can we in fact enact real change right then when we come together? Okay. Next time we march, can we say, okay, you're gonna let our brothers out of jail or whatever we march for, or we're gonna make it happen? We're gonna walk towards that courthouse and we're going to take it. You can shoot us, you can do what you want to, but they're not going to. You're gonna get it, you guys. America cannot stand. Well, I'm not gonna go there. Anyway. Okay, let me go on. Now I say, if Jewish people receive reparations for the Jewish Holocaust, the Japanese received reparations for their ill treatment during World War II, but blacks, the group that suffered and are still suffering from the greatest travesty and injustice this world has ever known, hasn't been given any tools for repair. Blacks may not be aware that their collective black consciousness is broken. You want to say collective black consciousness is broken, but one and if you're not aware, that means you are suffering. But if one analyzes this review and other studies on the state of collective black consciousness in society today, then just maybe there will be more calls to action addressing and repairing this state of being. Many would argue that as a result of the broken consciousness, black men and women are killing each other at a near epidemic level. So the United States government allowed the abuses of slavery, Jim Crow, and the institutional racism, systems that broke and continue to break black consciousness then. The United States government should or should not be responsible for repairing black consciousness. You tell me. I've answered the question, you guys. Thank you very much. Do your work. Make sure it's right. And give me, please, you guys, give me a critical thinking thoughts. And let's discuss this reparations thing, okay? Let's talk about this NGUZO SABA thing, okay? Thank you. Peace.